meeting is being recorded.
Good evening and welcome back to the Let's Talk Destiny talk show. Tonight, I am just absolutely honored to have one of my author friends and someone who I really look up to and respect, Dr. Joyce A. Brown. As you know, Let's Talk Destiny focuses on our purpose and our individual destinies. And so tonight, she and I are going to talk a little bit about her purpose, how she found her purpose, and how she's pursuing her purpose. We also want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. There's a lot of great content. I've had a lot of amazing guests that have shared some things that I know will bless your life. So be sure to subscribe to the channel at the end of this conversation. So also, we know this is the month of February and we are honoring Black history. And I want to talk about Black love as well, because there are so many negative things that are said about our relationships. And tonight I have an author with me who understands relationships and the diversity of Black relationships. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to share a little bit with you about Dr. Brown. She has established Organizational Development Solutions, which is a consultation, I'm sorry, I can't even read, a consulting firm specializing in enhancing the effective management, governance, and leadership capabilities of organizations through program development, evaluation, assessment, and training. Dr. Brown worked as a counselor, president, CEO of the Southwestern Michigan Urban League, and regional director, Kellogg Youth Initiative Partnerships for the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Dr. Brown has more than 30 years experience working in diverse community settings, nonprofit organizations, and philanthropy. She has a broad range of nonprofit management skills, including team building, staff development, budget development, and monitoring, assessing, and preparing for future needs. In addition to her multiple accomplishments, Dr. Brown is a motivational speaker, an advocate, and author who uses real-life experiences that are often left unaddressed in our communities. With her writing, she carries the reader into uncharted waters. One such experience that she writes about is Black love in all of us, its diversity. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the power of her pen and the purpose that she has in talking about putting these stories into writing. So first, welcome to my humble platform. And so honored to have you join me tonight. It's been a lot going on these last couple of months, but I'm glad we finally got together.
Thank you for the invitation. I have to say that I look at Facebook a lot because during this quarantine, there are not opportunities to get outside. And I have been fascinated by your journey. I have been amazed at how much you love and care for your family. I've always wanted the opportunity really to talk to you about your journey with your son, because I know that has to be bittersweet to be able to have just so little time, but yet you continue to love and advocate. And so I want to say that to you as we begin this program tonight. And just thank you for inviting me to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. That made my day.
You have to call me Joyce. You have to call me Joyce.
I was just feeling kind of down earlier today about my son. And so for you to say that really meant a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I want you to tell us a little bit about you. What are some of the things that you like to do? What are your hobbies? What makes you smile?
Okay. Mostly what makes me smile, my children and my grandchildren. I have 2 adult children, a son who is an elementary school principal and a daughter who is a special ed teacher. My grandson is 20 and he's in that transition phase. When I became a grandmother, I didn't want to be a grandmother. And so my friends jokingly called me Miss Brown, also known as Grandma, until I got used to being a grandmother because it was not my choosing. And then I have a 12-year-old granddaughter who is now in middle school. So those are the people who really kind of take up a lot of energy in my life. The other part of my life really has been working. I mean, I worked from the time I graduated at age 21 until I became ill in 2011. And so actually had to reinvent myself. And that's when the writing career started, after I became ill and unable to work anymore.
Wow, that's amazing, because a lot of times people have challenges, whether it's physical or mental or whatever, and they just stop and they get stuck in that I'm never going to be able to do what I used to do mode and whatever. And so it's encouraging to see people who understand the power in reinventing yourself. I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'm still breathing. I used to find myself in that place because I was taking care of my parents, and then they died like within 3 months of each other. And it was my heart's desire to move back to Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I was living. Then I moved back to help take care of them. And then before I could get back to Atlanta, I had my first stroke. And it's just been one thing after the other ever since. So for a little while, I went through the, pity thing and, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. And then I started seeing other ways that I could still help people, other ways that I could still share who I am and bless other people. And so when I hear you say, that you had this issue or this event that happened in your life that changed the trajectory of your life, but it didn't change who you were. And that's so encouraging. I appreciate that. So let me ask you this question. And I mentioned this to you earlier. I am fascinated by the books that I have read by you because, and I read a lot of books. I mean, I love to read. Sometimes I'm doing 2 or 3 books at a time. I have to make myself just stop and finish a book. But the books that I've read by you amaze me because though the subjects are things that we know are happening in life, you don't read about them much. And so when I start reading, especially Winter's Lament, I was totally not prepared. And I'm one of these people like I have an open mind. I'm very I get in trouble a lot with regard to ministry because I'm not closed-minded. I don't conform to religious restraints or anything. So I kind of like am open to anything. But I just got knocked off my chair when I read that book. And I have been wanting to tell you how much I love it because we're gonna talk about the book a little more in a minute. But the reason I feel like I'm drawn to your stories is because you take us places that we're aware of, but we don't usually go into.
That's right.
And that is a gift. And I just absolutely love that. So tell the listeners a little bit about Winter's Lament and what that book is about.
Okay. Winter's Lament was really a book. I won't say a book first. It was a story. I mean, and Reese appeared to me one day in the middle of a winter snowstorm. I mean, there was literally a snowstorm going on outside, and I was stuck in the house because for people who don't know me, I have heart disease and I have a defibrillator. And so cold air is one of my triggers. And so when it gets really cold out and really snowy out, I stay in the house. You will not see me going anywhere other than to get my mail out the mailbox. And so I was sitting here minding my own business, and Reese started talking to me and just continued to talk, to tell his story. And so I was like, I got to tell this story. I've got to explain to people that there are people in this world who we know, but yet we have no idea who they really are. And sometimes, because of our lack of awareness, we inflict harm on people.
That's right.
And so I just said, okay. So we started talking. Reese and I just simply started talking. And I just started writing. And I don't mind telling people. I didn't at the beginning. But Reese is trans, was born a woman, or actually a little girl, who very early on figured out that he was in the wrong body and that he was determined, even as a child, to figure out how to get out of that particular body and into the right body. But what Reese did is what so many of us do, and this is aside from the whole trans notion, is we pretend. We create a false sense of who we are. And we just expect the world to accept that falsehood. We expect the world to, I mean, I could say, I'm Dr. Brown and, and I manage a consulting company and I do this and I do that. That's just not who Joyce is. Joyce is a woman who loves to read, who loves to look at people and create stories about those people that may or may not be true. But it just always happens to coincide with where I am at the moment that I, come up with these things. Or I'm a woman who loves to tell stories to help people think differently. Because my initial background was in psychology and counseling, where you have to help people pull back the layers to get to the heart of who they are. And that's what happened with Reese. So we began to pull back the layers. And we found that Reese had done what so many other people do, is he had engaged someone else in this deception with him. And we see that every day. No matter what the scenario is, we can always find an accomplice. We can always find somebody who will co-sign our madness. And what that does is it actually hinders us from getting to the truth. And it is only when a person from his past who knew the absolute whole story came on the scene that he was forced to deal with who he was. Now, there were other people who were willing to harm him because of his past. But because, if you would say, and almost honest, because he had his own issues too. But when Zindy arrives on the scene, he's like, we're gonna have to do better, And that push is what Reese needed, because Reese was tired of the duplicity. He was tired, and that's what happens to us. When you live a lie, you get tired.
Get
And
tired.
it shows up in ailments.
That's right.
It shows up in your career. Uh, you become mistrustful of everybody around you.
That is
And
so true.
then if you take church and religiosity and thou shalt not and thou
Yeah,
shalt not and there not shall not, and you roll all that into one person, you got a real lament on your hands. And
that's right.
so that's how
Wow.
Reese came to be born.
I'm gonna tell you, and to everybody who will be watching this video, you need to get, and didn't even bring my book out of the bedroom, but you need to get you a copy of Joyce A. Brown's Winter's Lament. I'm telling you, um, it will change the way you um, feel about judging people. Like it will change your thoughts about how you just assume things and think you know so much when you really don't know anything about another person. And it will make you realize that you too have your own stuff that you're hiding. You may
Mm-hmm.
not be transgender, but you have something that you don't want people to know about yourself. And reading that book helped me to even understand, because I'm always getting, feedback or pushback, I guess I should say, because I'm always coming. I was told that I don't act like a Christian because I'm always saying something about the church, like talking about the manipulation and the control and what have you. And I just laugh it off because I've been hearing that ever since I can remember. Both of my parents were preachers, and I grew up in a really strict Christian home. And I was always asking questions. So I'm used to being labeled a rebel and always whatever. But that's okay too. But reading your book even pushed me further to understand that I have a right to ask questions. I have a right to pursue a personal relationship with the Creator, and that He accepts me and loves me as I am. And so that's the
Absolutely.
message that I'm
That was
trying
the
to teach
message.
people.
Yeah.
That's the
That
message,
that
because
was the
all this other
message.
stuff is just man-made traditions and doctrines, and it really does not guarantee you a personal relationship with God. So that book, yeah, you need to get a copy of Winter's Lament. If you don't have it, you've never read that book, I promise you that you need to get it. And then Miss Joyce, again, this is continuing the whole concept of how you come up with these ideas that other people that other people may know about, but it's like I'm not reading about it, so maybe I'm missing something. But it just fascinates me. The second book that I've read by Ms. Joyce is My Soul Cries Out. Now, let me tell you something, people. When I got this book, I had no idea what I was getting into. Like, I there's crime scene tape, so I assumed somebody died, and because I'm a crime fanatic, like I love crime shows, like my TV stays on Investigation Discovery Channel. Um, and so sometimes when I'm talking to my youngest son and he's like, I'm going such such place, and I'm like, be careful, watch this, watch the other. And he's like, Mom, you need to stop watching the ID channel all the time because you think every time somebody go out the door, something's gonna happen to them. But I was not prepared for this. Now, this particular book deals with again a subject that I'm familiar with, but I'm not comfortable talking to a lot of people about because there's always some judgment about it. But it deals with a young lady who was murdered. Her physical body died, but her spirit stayed in this realm as she was trying to make sure that her murderer was caught. And again, because this is something that fascinates me and that I have dealt with most of my life with, they call the second eye or the third eye, whichever eye. And since childhood, I've seen things and heard things that other people didn't see and hear. And so after I got called names and, told I was crazy and weird, I stopped talking about it. But as I got older, I just began to accept that that's just who I am. And it's a part of how God created me. So even with that, I was not prepared for this book. Apparently, my third eye wasn't working when I got this book. So this book, My Soul Cries Out. Miss Joyce, tell us a little bit about this book and where did you come up with this concept?
Well, actually, the premise behind the book emerged from the time that I lived in Battle Creek, Michigan, where the story is actually set. I moved to Battle Creek in 1987 to head up the local Urban League. And if you know anything about the Urban League, a part of our charge is really about trying to understand the community in which you live, that if you begin to understand what the needs are, you can begin to gear your programming so that it's not some cookie cutter that you've stolen from some other place, but it's really about addressing the needs of the community. So I embarked on walking. It's a small town, 50,000 people. And so I embarked on walking in certain neighborhoods and talking to people because I was new. Nobody knew me. I didn't know them. I just wanted to hear from the people.
Yes.
And I stopped at this one house, and the anger that those people projected was enough to really make me say, oh my God. But as they continued to talk, I understood their son had been murdered and they were getting nowhere. And they thought that I was simply just being nosy. They thought that I knew something and I had to, back up and profusely apologize to them because my intent was getting to know the area, not that I knew anything about them or their family. So that was, as you say, over 40 years ago. But that experience stuck with me. Then over time, I began to really notice that these murders were happening. Yeah. They were being unsolved. Nobody seemed to have a clue, who was murdering these people. And the police were apathetic, as you can tell from reading the book. They just were not on anybody's radar. Right. And so eventually the families of these dead persons came together, created an organization. And every year they would hold rallies. Every year they would march. And I always just felt badly for them. So anyway, so there's a little bit of me that is not a nice person. There's a little bit of me. I won't use that word, but there's a little bit of me that's just not a nice person. I can be sarcastic and a few other words. And I just decided one day that I'm going to write about this. I just feel the need to write about this.
Wow.
And that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. An incident happened that just forced me to say, yeah, it's time. It's time, because someone has got to pay attention.
That's right.
Someone's got to pay attention.
That's right.
To what's going on around us. And someone has got to protect our women.
That's
because
right.
That's a lot of times women, and we talked about Black love at the beginning of this conversation. Black women are no different than anybody else. They want to be loved. They want to be respected. and they want to be needed.
That's
And
right.
finally, they want to be part of a couple. You know, they don't just
That's right.
want a boyfriend, who, comes by for a couple of
Yeah,
hours or a couple of days or whatever, and then goes on back to his. They want
that's right.
an intact, secured by God relationship where
Yes,
they
ma'am.
can have children, where they can have ups and downs,
Yeah, yeah,
but they know that at the end of the day, there is someone who makes them whole or makes them
yeah.
feel whole. And for too many Black women in this era, that's not available to them
That's right.
because unfortunately, too many of our young men are spending their prime years in jail.
That's
And I
correct.
say that because I have family in jail. I
That's
say
correct.
that because I have family members who are in jail at a time when they should be out working, taking care of their children,
That's right.
loving up on their wives. And for whatever reason,
That's right.
whether truth or not, they are spending the most productive years of their
That's correct.
lives
That's correct.
in horrible situations.
That's right.
And those horrible situations often cause them to have a skewed vision
That's
of
right.
what a relationship with a woman should and could be. So nothing I write is ever easy or simple. It's just like, I'm just going to talk about this. I'm just going to
Yeah.
write about this because I think that what I want people to take away is the deeper understanding that our women do not find marriageable men because a lot of marriageable men are in prison.
Yes. And I love that um, you discuss domestic violence and family lies and secrets, but we hear a lot about that, especially lately. But the thing that really jumped out at me is what you just said, that there are so many of us, so many Black women looking and pursuing and wanting husbands and security and families, but the majority, a large majority of our males are behind the wall. And the sentencing is ridiculous. What our young men are serving time for, other race nationalities, their young men just get slapped on the hands for. But in this particular story, and I want again to encourage all of my sisters to get a copy of this book, because this young lady, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story because you need to buy the book, but she ended up, because of her hunger and her voids in her heart and in her spirit and wanting to be in a relationship. And I thought this was very important too, because she was led by the church um, to get involved in prison ministry. And this is why I keep saying that everything that has the church name stuck to it does not automatically mean it's a good thing. So she
Absolutely.
got involved in the prison ministry, going to the prison, doing service for at a male prison, and she gets involved with a prisoner or inmate there, and then all things go left. But the point is, as Joyce said, that her start, she even started down that journey because there was a void and there was a hunger in her soul and in her spirit. And you can say all you want to, I don't need nobody, I don't want nobody, I can take care of myself. There's a certain part of us that was created um, to need somebody, to want somebody to love us, to want somebody to need us, to just say to hear somebody say, I just think the world of you. You're awesome. I can't wait to get home to you every day. So you can be all bitter and angry, say you don't want nobody, all you want to, but everybody wants to be loved. And so this young lady in this book, and this is what I'm talking about when I say Miss Joyce writes about diversity of our relationships, because the first book we mentioned, Winter's Lament, was about a transgender person that wanted to be loved, but because of the way they're treated and abused, some of them murdered. We hear stories in the news all the time that they're murdered just simply because of who they are. They don't have to do anything. And so this, he wanted to hide that secret until one day the secret came out. But in this particular book, this young lady, she didn't want to tell her family members that she was falling for this guy in prison, because everybody has a judgment and a reason that you, girl, don't be crazy, yada yada yada. But I looked into her heart and I actually cried because I could feel the void and the vacancy in her heart. And sometimes, what I found out, Miss Joyce, is we don't, as women, we don't always even realize there's a void until the wrong thing comes along to fill it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the thing, is that by the time she figured out her family was telling her the truth, it was too late, because she had recreated this man, because he was not a murderer, he just was a drug dealer, and she figured, I can turn him to Christ and he won't want to do that. So, I mean, in the scheme of who's in prison, a drug dealer, while bad, she could have picked up a guy who was a murderer. But,
Yes.
it's hard. And I tell people this all the time. Relationships are complex. And so we have to have a little bit of empathy and sympathy for women who sometimes do pick the wrong men.
That's
because the right men aren't always available to them
right.
either.
That's right. That's right.
Now that's another story that we will not get into.
I know that's right.
We will not get into that story, but
yes,
sometimes there are just so few. And if your heart, and her heart was right, I'm always gonna say that when I talk to people, her heart was right.
That's
to
right.
care for another person. She just didn't look deeper. And oftentimes when people are locked up, they only tell you the part that's going to make you have sympathy for them. They're not going to tell you, the shady parts of who they are. And so, and again, I tell you that it's complicated. It's so complicated. And I tell people you can even have some empathy for the man who killed her. It's not right, thou shalt not kill. But I think what happens to people when they've been dehumanized, when every ounce of who they are is taken away from them. And our criminal justice system is good for that, for dehumanizing people.
Absolutely.
That when you look at that, the person who went to jail is not the person who came out of jail.
That's correct. And you know what? That's why you see me so much advocating, not just for my son, but for those that are in the prison system, period. Because he tells me stories sometimes and he says, and some things I don't even want to tell you, Mom, because I know it would upset you too much. Mm-hmm. He said, well, imagine every day for 20, 30, 40 years, you walking down on the tier and you look into a cell and you see a person hanging from the ceiling where they've killed themselves. Or you go down a few more steps and there's blood on the floor where somebody has shanked somebody and they're in the floor dead. And then he told me a few weeks ago, maybe couple months ago, This young man, he had been saying for days, I can't do it, I can't take it no more. And then all of a sudden he starts screaming one day, and he was up on the third tier, and he jumped head first to the bottom and committed suicide. He says, so imagine watching, seeing that every day, hearing those sounds. He said, a lot of people come in here, they don't have psychiatric issues. They get them after they get in here.
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
they don't get the proper treatment. So it only gets worse. So it is about human rights. It is about humanity. And I found it interesting that you said that about the gentleman that murdered her, because as I was reading about what happened to him, even though I wanted to punch him in the throat for what he did to her, I started feeling more sympathy, not justifying what he did, but
No, no.
it's like you say, you become a whole new person, and you are not who you were when you went in. And it takes a strong, I mean, a strong mind to
Yes.
be able to say, I'm not going to let this affect me like that. And everybody doesn't have the
No,
support system.
no, they don't.
Some people, my son said to me, he said, Mom, there are people in here who haven't even been able to use the phone for years because they really don't even have anybody to call. And then some of the gang members, they don't allow you to use the phone. So he said, I know a guy who was in another facility. He said he had made a phone call in like 5 years because every time he tried to use the phone, they wouldn't let him. What do you think that does to your mind when you have no connection with anybody outside those walls for years? So
Yeah.
I was just impressed with the many subjects that you approach in your book, and how you shine a light. Like sometimes authors write books and something jumps out at you. Well, I'll say jumps out at me as a reader, and then I'm left totally confused. Like, did they even realize they wrote that in there? Like they just flew over it and left it. But that's one of the things that I enjoy about your books is like when a subject jumps out at me, I can like really see it all the way through to the end. I think you do an excellent job.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. I tell people all the time that I write for me. I love that people read my books, but I write for me. And at my age, I've had a varied career. Plus, I have a wild family.
Mhm.
So I tried my hardest to be a romance writer, but I couldn't because there are lots of romance writers, and some of them are my great friends, and I wait for their stories to come out. But I'm like, there's so many other stories we need to tell. There
That's
are
correct.
so many relationship issues that we need to talk about.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'm just going to write about what's happening with women, and their interactions with men and the rest of the world. But
I
at the
just, I love it.
core, yeah, but at the core, when people get through reading a book that I've written, I want them to have an appreciation for women's lives
That's right.
as they are lived. And to be able to say, sometimes there's like a little prick that says,
Yeah.
ugh, but sometimes there's just joy. There's just
Yeah.
joy in knowing that we all live these multifaceted lives. We don't
That's right.
always talk about them, but we do. We live lives that are connected to
Yeah.
one another, and we just need to celebrate that.
That's right. Wow. I love it. But I want everyone who will watch this video, everyone connected to me, every woman that's in my life, I want you to get Miss Joyce A. Brown's books. Miss Joyce, give us your contact information, your website, and so that when they listen, they can hear.
Okay. Well,
These books.
actually, I am really, really bad. I should be telling you I'm sitting here with not a piece of paper in my hand.
Don't worry about it.
But the first thing they can do is I do have a Facebook page that is Joyce A. Brown, author. So that's the best place that they can find me. I have a website. It's called www.livethedream.com. Live the Dream. It's all one word. And I have been really bad, but they can go out on that website and force me to start going out on that website to talk to them. Or, people can email me. I love to chit chat with people via email. And that's a lot, for me, because like I say, I do have heart disease. I've come a long, long way. So people look at me now and they're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. And there really isn't. It's just a condition now. So, yes. But it means during COVID that I am literally inside the house, and unless there's a reason to go outside the house. But my email is Joyce Brown, all one word, lowercase, .ods, left over from my business, at gmail.com.
All right.
And within my business, and within my business, I still have one client. So I keep that email for my one client. And everybody else.
I have absolutely enjoyed this conversation because you just opened my eyes to so many things and reminded me of why I do what I do with regard to my connection to women, my connection to mothers. We can't give up on each other. We need each other. We absolutely need each other. I was last Saturday, I don't know if you saw the flyer on my page, but I did a panel discussion for Black and African kings and queens. And I wanted to talk about the state of our relationships. And so I wanted to have the equal number of males and females. So I started out with that equal number committed to show up. And then one by one, people started dropping out, and especially the males. And so we ended up, I think we have 4 women and then 2 gentlemen that I didn't know, but they came in on the Zoom and, they talked from a male perspective. And so when I was talking to my son about it later, he said, see, this is what I'm saying. He said, we are so out of place. He said, those of us, the majority of us are in here where I am, instead of being out there with our women and with our children.
Yes.
He said, and then those that are out there, they don't really take this thing seriously. He said from the very beginning, people, other nationalities have gone out of their way to keep us separated and done everything they could to make us feel like we don't belong together. We're not deserving of love. He said, and so we kind of like make them be like, okay, you must be right because I'm not willing to put forth the extra effort that it takes to be together. And so I thought about it when he said that, and he was really upset. Like I could tell he was getting really upset. He said, because like I talked to some of the young men in here where I am, he said, some are getting ready to go home. And I talked to them about, what is your plan? What are you going to do? You have children, you have a wife, what, and they don't have a plan. They don't even know if they're going to get back with their wife. They don't, so it is so important for writers such as yourself to focus on the needs that we have as people in romantically, just sisterhood. Everybody doesn't have to be sleeping with somebody to be important to them.
That's right. But absolutely right. Yeah.
We need that. And I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you for allowing me to come on your platform and have this conversation with you. This has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. And I so thank you for that.
I was so, I'm gonna share this and I'm gonna let you go, but I was so, when I first started doing this last March is the month that my mother passed. And so I decided to do, since I was paying this Zoom fee every month, I said, well, why don't I just get some mothers together, different mothers to come on, and let's honor motherhood in honor of my mom. And so that went very, very well. And a couple people said to me, you should keep doing it. And I'm like, oh, I don't think so, because I don't have the right equipment. I don't have a banner. I don't have right lights. I don't have all just this whole list of stuff of why I didn't think I should do it. And my sister said to me, when people tune in, they're tuning in for content,
Yes.
not
Yes,
balloons and banners and lights.
Mm-hmm.
She said, as time goes on, time goes on, you can get all of that. And so my oldest son said to me, he said, Mom, I think you should do it because you've been through some things and you can help walk other people through some things. And that I'm about to get all teary eyed again. So I decided to do it. And next month it'll be a year. And I keep saying, when I get ready to ask somebody to come, I'm thinking, I don't know if I have, I'm still saying a year later, I don't know if I have it, but I am so glad. Like, it's people like you that encourage me to keep going.
Well, I will tell you, I like the calmness of your background because sometimes you get distracted looking at crazy.
Yes.
And my background is really just my art hanging on walls.
Yes.
I mean, that's just what lives here with me. But I understand. I mean, there are some people who have all the bells and whistles. But at the end of the day, people tune in to listen to you.
Yes, ma'am.
They tune in because the words that you talk about are comforting, you know. And like I said to you at the beginning, I have a cousin who is in prison. I write to him regularly and he writes back to me. And so sometimes when I'm reading what you've written, it helps me in my conversations with him. Because it is, I mean, all the things that I won't rehash because we got to go, but all the things we've touched on that, you know, that you've heard from your son, I've heard from my cousin. And too many of us have tuned them out.
That's right.
Because we don't want to go inside what's happening to them while they're locked up.
That's right.
So keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I love you. I love your spirit. Yeah, I love your spirit. And I just appreciate you so much. So we'll definitely be talking again.
Okay, yes, I'd love that. Now that I figured it out. Look, now that I figured it out.
I was like, that's okay. I'm going to sit here and wait no matter how long it takes.
Thank you. I mean, I just couldn't get a picture. It's like, this is not right. And I do Zoom. I know better, but for whatever reason today, I just couldn't get it. But we worked it out.
It worked out. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Ms. Joyce. And I will be uploading this like within the next half hour.
Okay. Thank you. Again, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.